And welcome to the Suppress Herald podcast. It is Tuesday, the 17th of September, and here we are. We are rushing into an election, something like 50 days left, and the Suppress Herald is at an all-time high on propaganda and bending the news. And also have some interesting insights. A couple of things happened over the last week, and they've really you know keeping their game high on the propaganda side of things. I read in the Suppress Herald locally, this was back on early September, September 4th, it started. There was an article in the editorial page, Why Catholics Should Vote Democratic in 2024. Democratic policies are aligned with many Catholic social teachings. Yeah, right. The Democrats, anybody that's paying any kind of attention, are assaulting religion in general and Catholics in particular, and evangelicals as well. And they've been assaulting religion and religious freedom for really quite some time. And actually, in his first term as president, President Trump was a real advocate for religious freedom. And, we've had all people under assault by rules requiring, nuns to and religious orders to pay for abortions when it is absolutely against their religion to do so, and having to go to the Supreme Court. And of course, when the Supreme Court decided in favor of religion, religious freedom, religious conviction, the call is from the Democrats to basically change the court, pack the court, term limits for Supreme Court justices, and an all-out assault on the court itself, trying to bring into question the, you know, ethics and ethics complaints against conservative justices. It's what we'd expect and what everybody that's paying any attention knows. And this is just this really despicable, article from this Frank O'Hara as a resident of Hallowell, and making the case that, you know, there was a section here about how countries that have legal abortion have fewer abortions per whatever population than countries like Brazil, where it's illegal, and France, where it's legal. And France has fewer abortions. But, you got to understand that France also has almost no marriage, and their shrinking population, net negative population, and as is much of liberal Europe. And, it's apples to oranges, and it's just a silly. So, I took exception. And so I wrote a letter to the editor at the Suppress Herald. And here's what I wrote. As a practicing Catholic, I feel the need to respond to Mr. O'Hara's silly editorial in the Wednesday, 4th September paper. Per usual, he applies moral relativism to justify the Democrat Party's abortion up until birth position, which it is. That was disputed at the, and actually theoretically fact checked by the moderators in the Trump Harris debate. And yet there are something like 14 states that allow abortion, partial birth abortion, which is abortion right up till birth. And so anyway, he also tries to compare France's and Brazil's abortion rates as if those two countries are anything alike. They are not. The reality is this. Today's Democrat Party is simply using the abortion issue for pure political purposes. They want to hold power at any cost, and they have nothing else to stand on. They don't care about women or unborn children, and they definitely don't care for religion or faith, as demonstrated with their tolerance for anti Semitism and disdain for Christians and faith. Democrats only care about retaining power. It is clear that the Democrats have little to show for the last 4 years in power. The economy, open borders, wars are all indicative of very poor leadership. All they have left is vote for us and we'll kill more babies. I hope and pray that Catholics don't buy into what Mr. O'Hara is selling. That was my response. I submitted it, and it was kind of interesting because I actually got a phone call. First, I got the canned call that you have to confirm your address and so forth, which I did. I called and the record line and said, who I was and where I lived and what the deal was. And then I got a follow-up phone call from the editorial department. A woman called me while I was traveling on business and wanted to make some tweaks to that last line. And I don't even recall. It was very minor. It was something like, vote for us and we'll kill more babies. She wanted to change it to, all we got left is killing babies, whatever. She said she was going to put it in and, that it would be published. As of over a week later, it still has not been. I do believe they know who I am because they know about Suppress Herald podcasts. And I do believe that they have blacklisted me and conservative voices in the paper. So that's what you get. And, as a perfect example of to further that, here's an editorial in the September 10th, which is approximately a week later. Here's the headline of the editorial by a resident of Fort Fairfield spent 30 years in Florida in religious ministry. How far American Christianity has fallen. And it really talks about, Christianity and how it's not doing well and how he was a pastor and a Christian and all the rest. And it's observing the present state of affairs of American Christianity. It is disturbing to notice a mighty falling away of character. Character matters. Worldviews matter. Holy living matters. Voting with wisdom for a president matters. And there you go. This is nothing, as I said, the garbage that the Democrat Party spews on an almost daily basis. Here it is talking about the fall of religion, and it's because the evangelicals are supporting Donald J. Trump for president. And the whole article is nothing but a trope about Democrat power. And of course, the editorial board at the paper put that in. It's basically more garbage, but it's propaganda that is anti-religion in effect. And basically saying that all these Christians are, you have to negate them, cancel them if they vote for Trump. And the reality is, quite honestly, that, as I said previously, during his first 4 years in office, Trump stood up for religious liberty, for people following their faith and standing on their faith against the onslaught of transgenderism and guys playing in women's sports and nuns and priests and Catholic schools being required to support liberal causes and agendas like abortion and other things that they are stand on faith and will not support. And there's no question that Trump was a supporter of religious freedom and religion in America, and that in general, the Democrat Party is all about eliminating religion. The only religion they accept is the religion of liberalism. So it's, a couple weeks in review here, and it's just a lot of the same old stuff. Here's another one that's a developing story that continues, and you have these this garbage in the Suppress Herald that they print, and this is the Washington Compost again. Pretty much, if it's Washington Compost articles, it's propaganda. This has been proven. And, back in the Russiagate con of the American people, which is the biggest scandal probably in the history of politics in America, trying to make Trump out to be a Russian spy and all the rest of it. And turns out it was all just Hillary Clinton and the Democrat Party and the whole Steele dossier, all this garbage that by now everybody and their uncle knows is all just made up. But it tried to change an election in 2016, and then it tried to change a presidency for 4 years while Trump fought off Russiagate and hearings and the whole 9 yards. It was just garbage. Well, here we go again. Russian election meddling gets more nuanced. Oh, more nuanced. I guess that if that aligns with Putin, then I've been had. Conservative YouTuber, he says he was mentioned in an indictment. So they're getting into now they're starting to indict some Russians and say that they're trying to meddle in the election. Where do you think this is going? It's going to the same old thing. We all know anybody with a ounce, and I mean an ounce of common sense, knows that Putin wants Kamala Harris to win the election because she would be weaker and worse than Joe Biden. The reality was he wouldn't even know who he's dealing with because he doesn't know who he's dealing with the Biden administration. Joe Biden obviously is not running the country. I actually heard a media commentator slip just yesterday, listened to the radio, and former President Biden. And basically, that's where we are. He's not even the president anymore. He's on the beach. He's not doing anything. He can barely function. And now that they've replaced him and slid Harris in his place, they don't even have to pretend anymore. So they're just going along. So that's where we're at. You have these articles about this, Russian interference, and they're starting to pop up. And it's just really quite interesting. Now, my count on the ratio of editorial. This is a really interesting another exchange I had. There's a local editorial writer. He's considers himself kind of a curmudgeon, whatever, and thinks he's funny, and just usually is just universally slamming everybody. But he wrote an article recently in a local, you know, weekly free paper, liberal, extremely liberal paper. It would never make it if it was anything but free. If people had to buy it, it wouldn't survive. They do have some advertising, which is, basically if you want to find woke, if you want to find a woke restaurant, if you want to find a woke clothing store, if you want to find a woke business, go to the advertising section of this local brag. And this particular editorial writer had a big article in there about how a guy from Massachusetts has this media organization that is inserting conservative articles and misleading articles and trying to manipulate the news. And so I wrote him an email. He had an email is in that in his articles, and I wrote him an email and I said, "Yeah, that's interesting. What about the Suppress Herald and the entire newspaper organization of the state of Maine being taken over by the national distrust of local news? They started a local one for the local distrust of local news, and or the main distrust of local news, whatever it is, and it's run by all billionaires." And his response was, "Well, there's other papers. There's the Bangor this and the couple of little papers that, and the editorial page, that's for people's opinion." Yeah, that I did write him back even after that, and that'll be the last. But I wrote him back and told him that, here's the deal. You're either a fool or or a fraud. And I basically said, I think it's the latter because, to think that the editorial page is just people's opinion and that it isn't influenced by the editors at the paper is just beyond stupid. You're either an idiot or you're a fraud. And, either one isn't very flattering, but, you know, I've done the math. I've followed the paper's editorial page, as I've said many times, for over 2 years. It's going on 2.5 years. And the slant on the number of liberal letters that get printed, get it published, versus conservative letters that get published is now close to 10 to 1. It was 5 to 1 forever. And now we're in an election season, it's close to 10 to 1. And of late, I've actually considered papers, the city council of the city of Portland recently voted to divest from all Jewish or Israeli companies. And that didn't go over too big with the Jewish community and others saying that you know, isn't that just discrimination and anti-Semitism? And sure enough, it absolutely is. So if people wrote and said you're a bunch of anti-Semites at the town or the city council, I consider those a conservative. Well, in 1 week, there were only 8 conservative letters to the editor published, and 5 of those were calling out Portland for being anti-Semites. So the rest of it is the political side. And basically, what you have is Kamala's great and Trump sucks. And you have 3 Trump sucks in a week, and you have, well, more than that, you have 10 Trump sucks, and you have 10 Kamala's great. And then you have 2 Trump isn't so bad, or conservatives aren't so bad, or whatever. And it's now close to 10 to 1. And so, and even that, they actually published, and this was from the Las Vegas Review Journal in the Suppress Herald, Democrats the party of freedom with a question mark. Claims that freedoms touted by the Democratic Party are overwhelmingly authoritarian and based largely on coercion. The authors of this screed appear to prefer to live in a nation where millions of citizens cannot afford health care, where unemployment should not be the concern of the government, where child care and higher education should be available only to the wealthy, where industry can pollute our river and poison our air with impunity. This is freedom? Yep. Coercion. They're going to control all those things by government, which is absolutely exactly what the point was. But for every conservative letter to the editor that gets printed, they'll print 1 or 2 following letters disputing that editorial. And just an example of the Kamala bit. This is those that are on video. This is the front page of the opinion section. It looks like, this is back to Obama days. Kamala Harris with her hands up looking like, the chosen one or something. Harris could end America's era of hubris abroad. If elected this fall, the Democrat is likely to strive for the ideal described by George W. Bush when he was a candidate. Strong but humble. Strong but humble? George Bush got us into wars all over the place. They're warmongers. And she's saying, yep, I'm going to follow through on that. And she's not going to do anything because she's incredibly weak. But here you have, trying to build her chops up because she has no record. She's never done anything. And, every time she tries to describe policies she's going to do, it's just word salad. And you can hardly make sense of it. So it's up to the Suppress Herald and papers across the country, mainstream media, the social media to basically create, as if it was a cartoon character, Super Kamala. And that's where we are. So it's really a amazing, propaganda times at our local papers. And as I've said, politics is local, and definitely so is propaganda. And this is just a small one, but I put these aside. You know, here's just a small little article in the Suppress Herald. Trump refuses to agree to second debate with Harris. Trump refuses. You could just say he declines, but you've got to say refuses. The reality is, why the hell would he do another debate with somebody like ABC? And of course, Kamala will never do the likes of Fox News or even beyond. It's never going to be anything but a one-sided debate. Everybody knows that. There's no reason why Trump would go into that again. Everybody is acknowledged, even on the left. You even have Mark Penn, who was a major pollster and all, worked for Clinton, a Democrat pollster, Democrat, came out and said they should actually have an inquiry about the ABC colluding with the Democrat Party and the Harris campaign because that debate was so outrageously biased. But you'll never hear that in this paper. That you will not have Mark Penn's story about him writing an editorial saying that that was really egregious and a disservice to the taxpayers and the voters. That'll never make this a press herald. That's what they don't tell you. And here's, another editorial: eerie parallels between Project 2025 and The Handmaid's Tale. For one, the Project 25 has been basically dismissed by Trump. Some conservatives at the Heritage Foundation, there are actually probably quite a few things in there to shrink government and cut waste and so forth that would be helpful. But they're using it to scare people, and they just haven't given up. I mean, they tried to fact check him at the ABC debate, saying that Project 2025 is blah, blah, blah. And Trump said that's just ridiculous. It's already been debunked. I'm not, that's not my policies. That's not who I am. But here they go, trying to use it to scare us again. I could do the very same thing, the exact same thing, saying that the Communist Party of America supports Kamala Harris, which they do. Why don't they put that in there? Trump has said she's a communist. The Communist Party of America has endorsed her. That won't make the paper. But they'll lie about Project 2025. One of the biggest stories of the whole week. Now, I'm going to put off, I'll get to that last, but here, one more little article, and this is just: Fed welcomes soft landing, even if many Americans don't feel like cheering. I don't even have to go any further. The Fed is lying to us. The money is still flowing from the outrageous spending and the trillions with a T, dollars of deficit spending that the Biden Harris administration has done, mostly on the Green New Deal, called the deficit, whatever, garbage act that they passed, that's just spending trillions of dollars of money we don't have. They have to mouse click it at the Fed, create dollars, flood it into the system, and it's just propping up everything. It's propping up all that money flowing in is propping up the stock market, banks, and so forth. Let's go to the last and finish up for today. This is just the story of the week. Trump, during the debate, talked about the situation in Springfield, Ohio, where you have 20,000 Haitian immigrants in a town that was 60,000, now is 80,000. So 25% of the town is now Haitian immigrants, somewhat illegally brought here. By a stroke of a pen, they gave them an exception and said they can come, and they're flying them in. And so you've got this Ohio community, and there are videos and there are police reports of those Haitian immigrants eating geese and ducks from a local pond and eating someone's cat. And here's, so this is how they report on it. Immigrant communities battle Trump rumors. Since this has happened, since the outrage at Trump for bringing this up and saying this, I've seen, if you look for alternative news sources, actual on the ground reporting of what's going on in Springfield, Ohio. And it is very much exactly what they're saying. The town is overrun, social services are overrun, the local soup kitchen is overrun, homeless people in the streets because they've lost their homes, but illegal immigrants that have been given thousands of dollars a month in support are living in apartments where Ohioans used to live. They're now homeless. People are leaving. It's a disaster. Cat memes are one thing, but many are seeing threats to jobs, housing, and schools. Well, if they're illegal immigrants, in other words, they're not legal, they're not here with any real status, why are they taking jobs, filling the schools, and apartments? The reality is coming through regardless of the garbage that we have every day at the end of the driveway when the Suppress Herald delivers their propaganda sheet. And that's where we're at. And if people were aware of this kind of stuff, I think that the whole country would be different if this propaganda weren't happening on an everyday basis and influencing what people see, hear, read, and think. And that's it for today. Politics is local, so is propaganda.